Hello there, students. I am Miss Maxine Flores Pulado, your instructor for World Literature. This is our first, more or less, our meeting or our orientation for the semester and our subject. And I do apologize for this. We had to arrange a lot of things just to give you quality education despite this pandemic. So before we start with our discussion, let's talk about classroom rules and guidelines. So the rules and guidelines in our classroom, I'm not sure if you've seen our Facebook group, but I have already attached some rules and guidelines there. Usually, when I have class in person or face to face, I have rules and guidelines in the classroom. But since we are in a crisis or in a pandemic, then I opted to be a little bit more lenient, but it doesn't mean that we don't have rules to follow. So we do have 5 important rules here. The first one is I want you to show respect. Now, for me, I firmly believe in the saying, respect begets respect. So I want us all to be able to respect each other, not just you respecting an instructor, but you respecting your classmates as well. So when you communicate with them, send them a message or comment on their whatever comment or submission, I would expect you to show common decency and respect. I think it's, basic human decency for us to really show each other respect. Next one, you should post content that's related to the subject. Now, this is directly connected to respect. I want you to post content that's only connected to the subject. I've noticed there are some students who share raffle competitions, contests, other groups, whatever video you want to share that's not related to the subject. I would prefer that we would keep our group and our classrooms solely for world literature. The other one is honor privacy. Now, privacy is very important, especially now in the 21st century where it's so easy to have information leaked around. So there may be projects that will require you to share a personal experience or upload photos, and I would prefer that we would keep our privacy intact here in our group and of course in the class. This one is pretty obvious. I want you to avoid cheating. I don't want my students to be able to just easily cheat, especially when we have the full access to the internet. Now, plagiarism again is a crime, and I don't want you to be caught plagiarizing content or copying content from your classmates. If so, if ever you will be caught by me, you will automatically be given a failing grade. Lastly, I want us to use English as our medium of communication. This is merely because literature is also under the English department, and also I want you to be able to feel comfortable in communicating in the language because, someday we will be using English as a medium of communication. So if you have questions, comments, or issues, I would prefer that you communicate with me in English. And again, show some respect. In connection to this, I want you to try and avoid communicating with your classmates, with your instructor during ungodly hours like midnight or 3 a.m. Okay, now that we know our classroom rules and guidelines, we do have additional guidelines or information for both online and printed module. So there are different ways in approaching this one. Now, I know that for those who opted or chose for printed module, you have not yet received your printed module now, and I urge you to be a little bit more patient. This is because NORSU is still trying to finalize the module for credibility's sake and for us to be able to give quality education despite not being around to assist you when it comes to learning. Okay, now we have 3 important matters to discuss, and this is for deadlines, for instructions, especially during activities, and of course, additional points. So the first one is deadlines. Now, for online classes, deadlines should strictly be adhered. Of course, we are a little bit more lenient to online classes because there are some issues, especially when it comes to connection. So if you do have issues, you may communicate with the instructor, of course, with proper reason. And if you have proper reason, we may give you a leeway, but of course, with consequences. As for printed modules, it's a little bit different since we are giving you enough time to deal with this and you won't have any issues, especially with the connection. Then of course, deadlines are a little bit stricter. Deadlines should strictly be adhered and followed, and there will be subtractions from your points if it is submitted late. Unless, of course, there may be natural issues or obstacles that will prevent you from submitting it on time. Now for instructions. For online classes, instructions again are not that strict. It should be followed, but if you do have issues, technical issues, you may message your instructor directly, that would be me, and inform them with your issues. So for example, if your mode or your gadget is just a cellular phone and it cannot edit or access a certain file, you may communicate with me directly and we can find a middle ground concerning these instructions. For the printed module, however, since you will only be writing on the module, I would prefer and I would want you to follow the instructions given in the module. If you have not followed these instructions properly, then of course you will be given subtractions. Now, for additional points. Now, how will you get additional points? For students who chose online classes, your additional points is your active participation in class. Now, I will be sending videos like this for our discussion that you may be able to participate in, thus giving you additional points. For those who opted for printed module, however, you will be given additional points if you will be submitting this ahead of time or earlier. Now, this will not give you, and this should not put pressure on your shoulders because I don't want you to speed up and answer everything just so you can get additional points. Now, no matter how early or probably just a few days before the deadline you'd submit, it will still be the same. So I don't want you to answer an entire module for just 1 week. All right, now that we're finished with the rules and guidelines, let's proceed to our discussion on the introduction of world literature. Now, before we begin, I want you to ask yourself, can you name a renowned author or work of literature? How much literature do you know from other parts of the world? And what do you think about world literature? Now, these are just some of the questions that I want you to ask yourself. Aside from Romeo and Juliet, aside from Shakespeare, aside from, I don't know, Harry Potter, do you have any other popular works or classical works or masterpieces in literature that you are aware of? Now again, this is just the beginning of world literature. World literature in itself is a major, it's a course in the other areas of the world. Here, we will merely be having the tip of the iceberg when it comes to world literature. Okay, so world literature emerged in the 19th century. This was when literary connections of different countries have spread. So what do you mean by this one? When you say literary connections, this means when we have connected, each country has connected with each other. Now, when you say 19th century, it may seem like a long time ago, but 200 years is fairly recent. So when you say world literature, this is fairly new. And why? Why did it take that long for us to be able to have world literature? And I believe one of these reasons is that we didn't have the access to travel and send or share and exchange our different works to the different parts of the world. Now, when we talk about trade, through the ships that have traveled all over the world, people would automatically think, oh, this ship right here only brings with it treasure, only brings with it gold, clothing. But what most people don't know is that they also bring with them works of literature. Now, these works of literature have been traded between different countries, hence why our country now has access to the works of literature from the different areas of the world. We are lucky that we are born in the 21st century, where it's so easy for us, with just one click, we can automatically explore the different works of literature all over the world. Not only the works of literature, but different culture. We can experience that through videos. So I believe that with the dawn or the emergence of technology, we have more advantage when it comes to sharing and gaining intellect or knowledge. So why do we study world literature? What's the reason? How can this help us being an individual, being a professional someday? The very first reason is for us to be able to understand the lives of different people from all over the world. Now, as we all know, people from all over the world have different culture. We have different traditions and beliefs, different points of view. That for us to be able to understand how other people from other countries function, world literature is there to help us give a wider perspective for this. Another one is for us to have a world outlook. What does this mean? Now, when we talk about world outlook, we talk about different perspective and points of view. If you are open-minded, if you have that world outlook in you, you would be able to see things from a different point of view. And of course, you will have that ability to converse with other people and of course to communicate with them. And lastly, this is for us to acquaint ourselves with the masterpieces of literature. Of course, there are a lot of works now, but we are talking about the classics, the ones that are considered as a masterpiece of literature. For us to be able to open ourselves to these works and for us to know more about these works. Now, for the entire semester, we will be dividing the different works of literature, and as I've said, it's even a major, wherein people will be studying it for years, yet we only have one semester. So we have divided it into the 4 top works of literature. So the first one is Asian literature, the second one is African literature, the third one is European literature, and the fourth one is American literature. For those who opted for printed module, you will be given 4 modules that are subdivided into the different works of literature. For those who opted for online class, you will be given different discussions and activities that are connected to these 4 types of literature. To start off this semester, we have Asian literature. Now, Asian literature is a melting pot of cultures and influence merged together in a colorful array of varied literary works all throughout time. So by studying Asian literature, students will learn more about the role of beliefs, ancient philosophies, and traditions. Of course, you would also learn about Western influence and how it has ingrained itself in the different countries in Asia. When we talk about Western influence, we will be discussing about the colonizers, because Asia, despite being the biggest continent, has had different colonizers in different areas in different countries. And because of that, we have different influences. We have Western influence infused with our cultural heritage and our influence. So how does this mixture of influence and culture, how does this affect the works of literature and the people in the world, or more specifically, in Asia? And of course, lastly, you, the students, will have a grasp on universal themes as well as the diverse cultural backgrounds from the neighboring countries beyond the Philippines. We've already gotten through Philippine literature, and now you're here with world literature. It's different. In Philippine literature, we have embraced and understood the value of culture. In world literature, we will delve more into this value, but from different perspectives, from different lenses, from different walks of life in different countries. So this is what we will be undertaking during our study of Asian literature. Okay, now that we know more about the importance of Asian literature and world literature, I want you to have a short activity and interact with me. Now, after watching this video, I want you to write down in the comments some Asian traditions that still exist today. Now, when I say Asian traditions, of course, we will include our very own. That is because Filipinos are also Asians. So I want you to write down in the comments what you and your family will still follow, or what traditions you and your family still follow to this very day. If not you and your family, maybe people that you know. What traditions have reached the 21st century and people are still doing so today? And of course, aside from that, I want you to give a short explanation of the meaning of these traditions. So write down the comments for additional points. This ends our discussion and orientation. God bless you.